Welcome to Wandering Scribe. This is a recap of my House of Horrors. Disclaimer. All rights belong to the original authors and publishers. Only the narration and production are my own. Enjoy the story. Chapter 41. In the dead of night, Chen Ge stood in the dim corridor of his haunted house, eyes fixed on the black phone glowing in his hand. A new mission had arrived, deep water. It promised more than danger. It offered a glimpse beyond life's boundary. To complete it, Chen Ge would have to enter a bathroom alone at 3:30 a.m., draw a bath, light a candle, and at precisely 3:44 a.m., submerge himself and hold his breath for 60 seconds while focusing on someone he longed to see. Most would hesitate. But to Chen Ge, this wasn't just a supernatural trial, it was a potential clue. His parents had disappeared under strange circumstances, leaving behind nothing but a doll and the black phone itself. If this device was connected to them, then this mission might finally reveal the truth. The only available bathtub was deep inside the Murder by Midnight scenario, a place haunted by the mirror monster. There was no time to seek safer grounds. Armed with cleavers from the park's canteen, Chen Ge prepared for the ritual inside enemy territory. He worked swiftly, hauling water by the bucket, shattering mirrors, and placing the 4 ragdolls representing the victims of Ping in apartments around the tub. He set the candle, dim and flickering, beside him, the room now drowned in eerie shadows. The doll his parents left behind sat propped by the door, silent and watchful. As the minute neared, he removed his shirt, gritted his teeth, and stepped into the freezing water. The chill wrapped around him like a shroud. Water spilled over the edges, splashing onto broken glass. Chen Ge's breaths became slow, deliberate. With cleavers in hand and candlelight dancing on the surface, he focused. The moment had come. 1 minute. 60 seconds in the boundary between worlds. A test of resolve, and perhaps, the key to a truth buried deep within the unknown. Chapter 42. In the heart of a haunted scenario, Chen Ge sat alone in the dim bathroom, his body submerged in a shallow tub filled with icy water. A candle flickered beside him, its feeble glow the only source of light. It was precisely 3:44 a.m., the moment when yin and yang collided, as described by the black phone's nightmare mission. Holding his breath, Chen Ge slipped beneath the surface, clutching 2 cleavers, his body stiff from the cold. Silence surrounded him, broken only by the echo of his heartbeat. Darkness swallowed his senses, and the candlelight drifted away like a sinking memory. He counted silently, each second dragging like an eternity. He focused on one thing only, his parents. If he saw them, they were gone. If not, perhaps they were still alive. As the seconds stretched, unease crept in. A faint sound echoed, footsteps pacing the corridor beyond the bathroom. Something was outside. His heartbeat quickened, disrupting his rhythm. Then, violent bangs slammed against the door. The presence beyond had lost patience. The pressure in his chest grew unbearable. Muscles ached, his limbs weakened, and the candlelight above faded into darkness. Still, he endured, desperate for answers. Then, just as he decided to surface, a chilling force pressed down on his head, holding him beneath. There was nothing to see, yet something was there, unseen and overpowering. His fingers, numb and trembling, gripped the cleaver. With the last of his strength, he swung upward. The blade tore through the surface, striking something solid. A sharp crack rang out, and the unseen grip vanished. Chen Ge burst from the water, gasping, drenched and shivering. But he had survived. He had completed the mission. And more importantly, his parents had not appeared in the space between life and death. They were still out there. Alive. Chapter 43. Dripping with cold water, Chen Ge stood in the dim bathroom, still breathless from his brush with death. His chest ached, hands clenched tightly around the cleavers, and lips tinged with purple. As the dizziness slowly faded, he replayed the footage recorded on his phone, hoping to make sense of what had happened. The screen revealed a calm, dim bathroom. At 3:44 a.m., he submerged himself in the tub. The early seconds were uneventful. No footsteps. No pounding on the door. Nothing that matched what he had experienced. It appeared his mind had been twisted by illusions, or worse, something else was controlling what he could perceive. But then, as his on-screen self neared the breaking point, something emerged on video. A broken shard of mirror beside the tub began to darken. From its clouded surface, a black shadow slithered into existence. Its form was disturbingly familiar, similar to Yifeng. The shadow leaned over the tub, and just as Chen Ge tried to surface, it pressed down on his head. In the video, he thrashed violently, the cleavers flailing above water. The ragdolls placed around the bathtub reacted as if stirred by wind. One toppled forward, its body covering the mirror fragment. The moment the mirror was obscured, the shadow began to distort. Chen Ge's desperate swing finally struck its head. The shadow vanished. The cleaver escaped his grip, leaving a faint scratch on the tub's edge before he erupted through the surface, gasping for life. Watching the footage confirmed one thing: what he faced wasn't just hallucination. It was real. He picked up the brave ragdoll. Its small back had been cut by the mirror's edge, soaked and torn, but its action had saved his life. Chen Ge realized not all entities from the other side were hostile, some helped, some harmed. Their nature varied, but their presence was undeniable. Then, he noticed something chilling. The mirror fragment, once inert, had droplets forming the number 3 on its surface. Was it a countdown? A threat? A message? He didn't know, but it fueled his resolve. Turning to the black phone, a message lit up the screen. Nightmare mission complete, duration, 62 seconds. Reward: yin-yang vision, the ability to perceive the unseen. He had barely succeeded, ironically due to the interference of the mirror entity that tried to end him. And with it, another surprise. A new feature unlocked: my friends from the other side, affection status. Chapter 44. In the dim bathroom, Chen Ge scrolled through the new feature on his black phone, my friends from the other side. A list appeared, spirits he had encountered, now tagged with varying levels of affection. Most were distant, strangers cloaked in sorrow. But 2 stood out. Qin Xiaoxiao, the youngest among the lingering spirits, was labeled a baleful specter, and she regarded Chen Ge with a flicker of familiarity. Slightly favorable. He lifted her small doll-like form and poked her cheek. She bristled, giving off a kitten-like defiance, as though insulted by the gesture. Though small, she had protected him earlier, a sign that not all ghosts bore malice. Then came the final name, Zhangya, a red specter. Her status read, crazy about you. But the affection came with a chilling condition: only after death. Intrigued and uneasy, Chen Ge tapped her profile. The screen bled red. A prompt appeared, warning of a bloody heart mission, a task steeped in danger and darkness. Only specters with traumatic pasts could offer such missions. Chen Ge closed the prompt, sweat forming along his back. That kind of attention wasn't comforting, it was lethal. He turned to the second reward, yin-yang vision. Unlike what the name promised, it didn't instantly reveal hidden specters. The bathroom looked unchanged. His eyes, too, appeared normal in the mirror. Lifting Xiaoxiao again, he saw only a doll, no ethereal glow or sinister form. Either he lacked the conditions to activate the ability, or hadn't yet understood its use. Stretching his tired limbs, Chen Ge prepared to share his experience. He trimmed the video from earlier, the full minute spent submerged in the tub, and uploaded it to a well-known supernatural forum. Titled "Why Would Someone Voluntarily Drown Themselves at Home?" the video was raw and unsettling. Despite the hour, the forum buzzed instantly. Viewers dissected every frame, some catching a shadow lurking by the tub. The comments exploded. To linger at the edge of death, this is insanity. What's that figure near the bathtub? Even the forum moderator chimed in, mistaking the footage for a ghost summoning ritual. Chen Ge quietly read the responses without replying. He edited the clip into a cleaner version, 1 minute holding breath challenge, and posted it again. The simplicity of the title lured viewers in. Shock followed. Some joked, others recoiled. But all saw it, the flicker of something dark near the water's edge. Chen Ge leaned back, watching as views climbed. The monster in the mirror had nearly taken his life. But now, through pixels and silence, he shared that terror with the world. Chapter 45. As dawn broke over New Century Park, Chen Ge emerged from a long, sleepless night. His eerie video had just gone live, drawing a flood of attention. Fans reacted with awe and fear, claiming to see shadows and unsettling figures in the footage. The buzz confirmed one thing: Chen Ge's haunted scenarios weren't just immersive, they were terrifyingly real. After uploading the clip, he sealed off the murder by midnight room with heavy planks, choosing safety over profit. Though the scenario could generate thousands daily, the dark presence lingering within made reopening too risky. With 5 strange dolls pressed to his chest, he left the set and began his morning jog, mindful that without his physical conditioning, the previous night could have ended in tragedy. Returning, he crossed paths with his employee Su Wan, who was surprised to see him sweating from exercise. The haunted house opened its gates as the first guests trickled into the park, but puddles inside raised questions. Chen Ge dismissed them, warning Su Wan to avoid mirrors, though he gave no reason. Just then, Uncle Su, the park manager, approached with a stern face. Surveillance had caught Chen Ge sneaking into the canteen at night and taking 2 cleavers. Chen Ge brushed it off as a protective measure tied to a previous investigation, promising to replace the blades. Though skeptical, Uncle Su handed him a tightly wrapped plastic case, emergency funds, in case something went wrong. Chen Ge tucked the cash away and considered his options. With limited space inside the haunted house, he would need to expand, perhaps into the underground parking lot. But cost was a concern. Money, or rather the lack of it, loomed as his biggest challenge. That's when he noticed someone, an unfamiliar man loitering near the attractions. With a low-slung cap and both hands buried in his pockets, the figure seemed oddly careful, as if avoiding attention. Thanks to his enhanced vision, Chen Ge caught subtle movements others missed. The man wandered aimlessly, never approaching the haunted house, until Chen Ge was about to leave for lunch. Chen Ge doubled back. Sensing his presence, the man quickly exited the park. Uneasy, Chen Ge skipped his break and reviewed security footage. The man had avoided cameras, never removed both hands from his pockets, and only rode one attraction, the Ferris wheel. He went on it 3 times. Each detail deepened the unease. Something about the man seemed familiar, yet deliberately concealed. A chill settled over Chen Ge. Someone wasn't just watching him, they might be planning something far worse. Chapter 46. In the dim light of the security office, Chen Ge stood silently, his eyes fixed on the surveillance screens. Every small action of a lone visitor was etched into his memory, too deliberate, too careful. The man had entered the park, face half hidden under a cap, sleeves long despite the warm day, left hand buried deep in his pocket. He had only ridden the Ferris wheel 3 times, scanning the grounds from above like he was mapping an escape. Chen Ge's instinct stirred. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, he contacted Inspector Li of the Western Zhejiang City Police. Calm but urgent, Chen Ge detailed what he saw. It wasn't just a hunch, he believed the man was Zhang Peng, the final suspect from the Ping'an Apartments incident, now hiding in plain sight. Uncle Su, summoned in the middle of his lunch, entered the room only to be met with Chen Ge's quiet but unnerving claim: someone was trying to harm him. At first skeptical, Uncle Su listened as Chen Ge laid out his observations: how the man never used his left hand, likely concealing a tattoo, how he loitered around the haunted house but only moved in when Chen Ge and his assistant, Su Wan, stepped away. It wasn't just caution, it was a plan. Chen Ge suggested the man had been scouting the haunted house, waiting for the perfect moment. With its dark corners and isolated rooms, it was the perfect place to carry out an attack unseen. Fortunately, the man had acted prematurely, and Chen Ge's vigilance caught the danger before it could unfold. By the time the police arrived, the suspect had already slipped away, his actions unnoticed by most but not by Chen Ge. Inspector Li reviewed the footage and confirmed Chen Ge's fear. This was Zhang Peng. The police immediately set a trap, preparing for the fugitive's possible return. But the officer warned Chen Ge, the suspect was dangerous, and he should keep away from the haunted house. Chen Ge, however, remained resolute. Leaving the attraction unattended would only signal that the suspect had been found out. That would make him flee for good. No, Chen Ge chose to stay. He knew the risks, but the haunted house was his. And if Zhang Peng dared return, Chen Ge would be ready. The real horror wasn't within the haunted house's walls, it was the man who tried to turn it into a hunting ground. But Chen Ge wasn't just a keeper of scares. He was a survivor. And he planned to make sure the only one who wouldn't leave that house again was the one who came with darkness in his heart. Chapter 47. As night blanketed New Century Park, Chen Ge sat alone inside the haunted house's dimly lit control room, his body draped in the familiar Dr. Skullcracker outfit, hammer by his side. Surveillance screens flickered before him, capturing each corner of the attraction's eerie silence. Earlier, Inspector Li had refused Chen Ge's plan, deeming it too dangerous. But Chen Ge saw no other way. Letting Zhang Peng escape meant living in perpetual fear. Using the haunted house as bait, he hoped to end two threats at once, Zhang Peng, and the mirror monster lurking within. As 5 p.m. arrived, Su Wan was sent home early. Chen Ge made preparations in silence, setting the trap with meticulous care. The police had surrounded the park, hidden from view. All he needed was patience. By midnight, the familiar sound of distant sawing echoed from the Murder by Midnight scenario, a haunting rhythm that had surfaced the night before. Yet the true danger hadn't arrived. Not yet. Then, at 1 a.m., the control room monitor flickered, movement. The bathroom door creaked open, and a gaunt figure slipped inside, blade in hand. Zhang Peng had returned. He crept through the corridor, avoiding props and furniture, unaware he was being watched. 15 tense minutes passed before he reached the staff break room. His breathing was shallow, fingers trembling as he hesitated at the door. Several times he reached out, only to pull away, fear and desperation wrestling for control. Then, with one decisive motion, he forced the door open and leapt inside. A minute later, he emerged, wounded but relentless. His knife now carried a faint smear of red. Rather than attack the control room, he veered toward the sealed-off trapdoor at the end of a forgotten passage. Chen Ge's eyes narrowed as the man pried the boards loose and disappeared into the Murder by Midnight scenario, the very place the sawing had come from. Confused, Chen Ge remained still, analyzing. Did Zhang Peng believe he was following the source of the sound? Or had something else drawn him in? Either way, the trap was in motion. And the night was far from over. Chapter 48. Zhang Peng, driven by twisted vengeance, entered the Murder by Midnight scenario of a haunted house. He gripped a blade, unaware of the supernatural entity lurking ahead. The persistent sawing noise didn't stop with his intrusion, it only deepened the unease. Chen Ge, watching from the control room, made his move. Cloaked in the Dr. Skullcracker outfit, iron hammer in hand, he abandoned his surveillance. His goal was clear: witness the mirror monster possess Zhang Peng and eliminate two threats in one act. Meanwhile, inside the scenario, Zhang Peng struggled to suppress rising paranoia. Though he had planned the ambush meticulously, the unsettling sounds and twisted layout overwhelmed his nerves. Blood already trailed from a self-inflicted wound as he moved closer to the source of the noise. Then, he saw it, a dark figure at the end of the corridor, scratching at a door. Seizing the moment, he lunged forward, knife raised. But as the blade met its mark, it passed through nothing. Zhang Peng slammed into the door instead, breath stolen by confusion. The shadow was gone. He lit his surroundings with a phone, revealing shards of mirror and deep scratch marks, proof of something otherworldly. The corridor seemed to stretch unnaturally, shadows dancing just out of reach. Cold sweat slicked his skin as panic replaced rage. Revenge was no longer the mission, survival was. Stumbling back, he darted toward the stairwell, not realizing the door's position had subtly changed. From behind it, Chen Ge struck. The blow landed hard, sending shock through Zhang Peng's arm. Staggering, he looked up into a skin mask twisted with lifeless expressions. Chen Ge loomed over him, silent, hammer in hand, eyes void of emotion. Zhang Peng's fear spiraled into terror. The hammer gleamed under the hallway light, grotesquely shaped like a spine. As Chen Ge swung again, aiming for the legs, Zhang Peng narrowly dodged, abandoning his knife and scrambling to flee. With every step, the hallway felt more cursed, the weight of dread bearing down on him. Chen Ge chased without hesitation, determined to force the monster's possession and ensure neither threat would walk out of the haunted house again. The hunt descended to the first floor, one man fleeing for his life, the other calculating his final move in this dangerous game of predator and prey. Chapter 49. Zhang Peng bolted through the dim corridors of the haunted house, his vision blurred and limbs faltering. Panic twisted through him as he realized he was lost in the maze-like layout. Behind him, calm and unyielding footsteps echoed. Chen Ge was following with an iron hammer in hand. Despite his wounds, Zhang Peng pushed forward. His left arm throbbed, his right hung uselessly, yet desperation propelled him onward. Chen Ge, relentless, herded him toward a dead end. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a familiar silhouette beckoning from the shadows. Frightened and confused, Zhang Peng turned toward it instinctively. But this was no savior, it was the mirror monster, mimicking a human form, guiding him with sinister intent. Zhang Peng stumbled into the bathroom, unaware of what awaited. The moment he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him. Chen Ge arrived seconds later, only to find the door locked and barricaded from within. A scream pierced the silence, followed by the sound of chaos. Chen Ge's attempts to break in were frantic. When the wooden door finally gave way, he peered inside through a narrow opening. Within the dim room, Zhang Peng stood in a trance before an uncovered mirror. Between him and the reflective glass loomed a large, black shadow. The creature slowly changed shape, mirroring Zhang Peng's form, before partially melting into the mirror. Zhang Peng's face pressed against the surface. Their figures began to merge. A wicked grin formed on his expressionless face. Then, in a disturbing act, he used blood from his arm to write something onto the glass. Moments later, clarity returned to Zhang Peng. With a shiver, he turned and fled through the window, vanishing into the night. Chen Ge was still processing what he had seen when the front gate burst open. Inspector Li and his team stormed in. Quickly shedding his costume and hiding the hammer, Chen Ge portrayed the image of a shaken but unharmed victim. He reported Zhang Peng's escape, playing his role convincingly. Li, impressed by his bravery, vowed to capture the suspect. While inspecting the staff break room, they discovered blood-stained bedding and erratic knife marks, clear signs of attempted murder. Satisfied with the evidence, Inspector Li moved to secure the scene. Meanwhile, Chen Ge quietly retrieved the hammer he had hidden and returned to the bathroom. He stared at the shattered door, haunted not by what had occurred, but by the eerie message that now lingered on the mirror's surface. Chapter 50. Inside the dimly lit bathroom of the haunted house, Chen Ge stared at the crimson number written on the mirror, 2. The eerie marking wasn't just unsettling because it was drawn in blood, it was the continuation of a pattern. Just the night before, a 3 had been etched on another mirror. Was this a countdown? Chen Ge couldn't shake the thought that something was coming. With Zhang Peng now possessed by the mirror entity, the message left behind hinted the monster wasn't finished. If the numbers were descending, what awaited when it reached 0? Unease sank deep into Chen Ge's chest as he leaned against the doorway. He didn't know if the number signaled danger for him or something worse. Yet with no answers and no new clues, he could only wait for nightfall. Outside, the police combed the area for Zhang Peng. Inspector Li, though reassuring, couldn't ease Chen Ge's thoughts. The fear wasn't from the man they were chasing, but from what was now inside him. As morning light crept into the haunted house, Chen Ge sat alone, surrounded by eerie silence. Even his only ghostly companion, the doll-sized specter Su-wan, seemed powerless, offering only silent loyalty. The recent missions had granted him tools and background upgrades, but none of them helped in fighting what loomed beyond comprehension. He considered one last hope, the powerful red specter Zhang Ye. Her mission, Bloody Heart, could bind her to his aid. But her affection for him bordered on the dangerous. If her fondness grew too quickly, she might not wait for him to die naturally. With caution, Chen Ge made a vow: if the number dropped again tonight, he would complete the Bloody Heart mission, no matter the risk. As day passed, Chen Ge used Uncle Su's funds to outfit the haunted house with a network of surveillance cameras, fulfilling a black phone mission. His reward, an ominous audio track called Wedding Dress, haunting in both melody and tone. When tested, the music unnerved even him, perfectly suiting the Minghun scenario but too disturbing for casual use. That night, after cleaning up the remnants of shattered mirrors, Chen Ge sat once more in the haunted house. Midnight crept closer. His eyes scanned each mirror, his grip tight on the black phone. Whatever the numbers meant, he would be ready. Or at least, he hoped he would be. Chapter 51. With heavy eyes and a haunted mind, Chen Ge stood silently in the darkened bathroom, eyes locked on the mirror. The dolls nestled in his arms were his only companions as he waited for the stroke of midnight. Just seconds before the hour struck, his phone vibrated. Inspector Li was calling. Through the static urgency of the call, Chen Ge learned that Zhang Peng, now a vessel for the mirror entity, remained at large. Worse, an officer who had intercepted him was found in a deep coma. The danger was growing, not retreating. As the news sank in, Chen Ge caught a movement from the corner of his eye. Another number, 1, had appeared in crimson across the mirror's surface. The sequence was clear now: 3, 2, 1. A countdown, or a body count? A creeping urgency gripped him. If this pattern continued, tomorrow could bring devastation. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. Chen Ge opened the black phone and examined the refreshed missions. The easy and normal tasks were mundane. The nightmare mission hinted at a hidden presence in his own room, but it was too vague, its reward uncertain. Instead, he turned to the one mission he had avoided until now, the Bloody Heart mission tied to Zhang Ye, the Red Spectre. Accepting it might put his life in danger, but she was powerful, likely far stronger than the mirror entity. After a moment of hesitation, he chose to accept. The screen on his phone darkened, revealing a cryptic tale: red dancing shoes. It spoke of a pair of cursed shoes that would force the wearer to dance endlessly until collapse. The mission was clear: he had to travel to Western Zhejiang's abandoned private academy and retrieve the shoes before dawn. The school, long abandoned and shrouded in eerie rumors, would be the site of his first meeting with Zhang Ye. The task was odd, unsettlingly romantic in tone, yet laced with clear menace. Chen Ge calculated the distance. There was just enough time. Despite the chill of unease that trailed him, he went to prepare, cleaning himself up and dressing in fresh clothes. Before the mirror, he took one last look at himself. The number 1 still lingered faintly in the glass, like a silent promise of what came next. In 50 minutes, his date with the unknown would begin. Chapter 52. Past midnight, Chen Ge stood in the quiet of his haunted house, preparing for what might be his most dangerous mission yet. Into his old backpack, he packed a power bank, a tool mallet, the cursed love letter, and a protective doll once left behind by his parents. The penknife, this time, went directly into his pocket. He was armed more with desperation than confidence. Locking up, he sprinted through the empty amusement park and flagged down a late-night cab. The driver, an upbeat man, hummed along to old disco tracks while Chen Ge immersed himself in his phone, researching the eerie tale linked to his mission, the red dancing shoes. The story told of a girl cursed to dance endlessly, a grim echo of Zhang Ye's death. She too wore red shoes at her end. His destination, Western Zhejiang's private academy, was abandoned years ago. Online rumors blamed funding and fees, but none mentioned Chen Ge. Her name had been erased from every record, leaving only questions in Chen Ge's mind. What despair could turn a schoolgirl into a red specter? Why red shoes? The further they drove, the more the surroundings withered into isolation. Buildings gave way to darkness and forest. The driver chatted, trying to lift Chen Ge's spirits. When asked why he was heading to such a place so late, Chen Ge simply said he had a date. Curious, the driver offered advice about making good impressions. Chen Ge played along, though the weight of his reality was far heavier. This wasn't a date, it was a confrontation with a spirit of intense sorrow. As the cab neared the school, Chen Ge's penknife slipped from his pocket. The driver noticed. His fingers subtly pressed a hidden button beneath the radio, likely to record the moment for safety. Chen Ge caught the movement but said nothing. Instead, he smiled and paid his fare, sensing the driver's suspicion. Looking out at the looming silhouette of the academy, Chen Ge whispered to himself, more truthfully this time, he was meeting someone. But this wasn't about love. It was about survival. Chapter 53. Under a starless sky, Chen Ge stepped out of the taxi near Western Zhejiang's private academy. The driver's relief was palpable as the vehicle sped away, flashing a distress signal he had covertly activated. Alone, Chen Ge tightened his grip on the backpack filled with tools, the mallet, a power bank, Zhang Ye's love letter, and the doll hidden close to his heart. Time was slipping, only minutes left until his mission began. The road to the school was engulfed in forest and silence. Guided by his phone's flashlight, Chen Ge found the rusted front gate sealed shut. He tossed his backpack over, scaled the wall, and dropped into the overgrown courtyard. The school's forgotten structures loomed, swallowed by creeping vines and twisted trees. Somewhere inside waited the red dancing shoes, cursed and bound to Zhang Ye's past. As he moved deeper into the compound, something unseen seemed to press gently at his back, hurting him forward. When he tried to step back, an invisible resistance pushed against him. Though his light revealed nothing, the sensation remained. Was she already here? Chen Ge tightened his grip on the mallet. The girls' dormitory stood in the dark, no taller than 4 floors but radiating unease. Its glass entrance was bound with chain, yet through it, he glimpsed a corridor cloaked in shadow. At its center, illuminated by a broken, exposed ceiling light, sat a solitary chair, facing away, positioned with unsettling precision. It didn't belong there. The hallway was too clean, too intentional for a forgotten object. Was it left behind on purpose? Or placed afterward, despite the locked doors? As Chen Ge studied the scene, the light above flickered faintly. The chair sat directly beneath, the frayed wiring above it dangling like a silent warning. The image resembled something ominous, too deliberate to ignore. He turned away, trying to calm his racing thoughts. This was just a mission, a twisted form of affection. Zhang Ye was a red specter, and this entire encounter, a haunted date. He held her love letter, surely that offered him some protection. Summoning courage, he approached the door again, mallet ready to shatter the glass. But then he froze. The chair had moved. It was no longer beneath the light. It had edged closer to the door, closer to him. In that moment, Chen Ge wasn't just facing a cursed object or a haunted school. Chapter 54. The night weighed heavily on the abandoned school, its silence broken only by the crunch of Chen Ge's steps. He stood outside the girls' dormitory, staring at the chair that had seemingly moved closer on its own. Though the corridor remained still under his watch, unease pressed against his thoughts. He secured his phone near the entrance to record, hoping to catch the chair in motion. But the playback revealed nothing. Still, once he stepped close, the chair had advanced again, now inches from the glass door. Whatever it was, it only revealed itself when near the living. Chen Ge chose caution. Destroying the door could expose him to unknown threats lurking inside. His mission was clear: locate Zhang Ye's red dancing shoes. If the chair posed no immediate danger, he would search elsewhere and return if needed. Returning to the school gate, he noticed something troubling. There were no headlights, no signs of the second taxi that should have arrived. A chill crept over him. Whoever was following him likely abandoned the vehicle to approach undetected. That meant he wasn't alone anymore. Determined not to waste his head start, Chen Ge moved toward a building that stood apart from the rest, its faded red exterior setting it ominously apart. A weathered sign read "No Entry," a detail that only deepened his suspicion. This building, he guessed, could be the true location of the red shoes. Avoiding the chained front door, he slipped through a broken window into a dusty artist's studio, the air heavy with the scent of paint and time. Marble busts and abandoned canvases watched silently as he crept through the room. At the far door, a faded banner read "Arts Activities Center." Inside, the dim glow of his phone cast long shadows across forgotten classrooms. He searched the first floor room by room, each one empty, lined with ghostly reminders of creativity long abandoned. The second floor was worse. As he stepped into the corridor, his breath caught. There it was again. A wooden chair sat alone in the hallway, identical to the one from the dormitory. No sound, no movement, just the chilling realization that it had followed him. The presence was not bound to one place. It was watching. Waiting. Moving. And Chen Ge was not alone in the darkness. Chapter 55. The corridor on the second floor was still and shadowy, a lone wooden chair placed ominously in the center. Chen Ge hesitated at the staircase, the memory of the dormitory chair fresh in his mind. This one seemed out of place, not matching the building's furnishings. Its presence felt intentional. Compelled to investigate, Chen Ge edged forward, carefully approaching. The corridor was lined with closed doors and dust-covered windows, no light escaping the classrooms. Every step left a mark in the thick dust, a trail for whoever might be following. Drawing close, he circled the chair. Though nothing moved, unease clung to the air. Curiosity overtook caution, and he knocked the chair onto its side. Underneath, a girl's name, Chen Yujiao. A confirmation, this chair had been brought from the dormitory. Likely, each student had marked theirs during school events. Leaving the chair in an empty room, Chen Ge pressed on, ascending to the third floor. The corridor was empty, but signs of repainting caught his eye. Strange, considering the school's closure. His instincts, sharpened by past experiences, suggested concealment rather than restoration. He scraped at the paint with his mallet, revealing nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, inconsistencies in the renovations, especially near piping, hinted at secrets the walls refused to give up. The third floor, in stark contrast to the others, seemed abandoned even before the school had shut down. Some classrooms were locked, others were stacked with unused furniture. Moving upward, he paused at the stair landing. The fourth floor was cordoned off with a rope and a wooden warning sign, "No Entry." Ignoring it, Chen Ge slipped underneath and emerged into a floor with a different structure, a large open space instead of separate classrooms. His eyes landed on a worn sign above a door, "Dance Studio." Finally. The locked studio resisted briefly before Chen Ge forced his way inside. Dust covered the polished floor, and a sharp, stale scent lingered. He stayed close to the wall, scanning the vast space. Mirrors lined the far end, and beneath them sat 3 wooden chairs. Each one mirrored the design of the chairs he'd found before. Warily, he toppled them. More names, each different, each feminine. Including the ones in the dormitory and on the second floor, 5 chairs had now appeared. Each bore a girl's name. 5 girls. 5 chairs. Their quiet presence filled the empty studio like an invisible audience. Something had happened here, something hidden beneath the surface of waxed floors and repainted walls. Chen Ge tightened his grip on the mallet. Chapter 56. The dance studio, though cloaked in stillness, bore signs of recent activity. Chen Ge scanned the tidy room, no dust, no debris. Someone had been here before. His eyes landed on a list of competition results where the top name had been scratched out, mirroring the earlier anomaly. Among familiar names like Chen Ge, one was missing, Zhang Ge. A group photo caught his attention. 5 girls posed closely, while a 6th, tall and elegant, stood alone at the edge. The image had been crudely cropped to erase her, but her pale dance shoes gave her away. Moving through the building, Chen Ge entered a small adjacent office. A teacher's space, it held only a bed, a desk, and drawers filled with certificates. Again, one name on the winning roster had been struck out, the 6th member, hidden from record. When he returned to the studio, the wooden chairs had inexplicably shifted closer to the door. Unease growing, he pressed deeper into the building and reached the girls' dressing room. Lockers lined the walls. Most bore name tags, but one stood isolated and bare. Inside that lonely locker, a faded ballet dress rested on the top shelf. Beneath it, Chen Ge found 5 candy boxes, their wrapping delicate, names handwritten, one for each girl from the photo. These had been gifts, once. At the bottom lay a photo, the unedited version. 6 girls celebrated a victory, and one stood apart, tall, graceful, luminous. She seemed too perfect, almost unearthly. Chen Ge whispered the name that had lingered in his thoughts, Zhang Ge. The moment the name passed his lips, the room reacted. Lockers shuddered violently, groaning under unseen weight. Outside the dressing room, something pounded at the door. Chen Ge clutched his mallet, approaching the exit, only to find the wooden chairs blocking his path, positioned with eerie intent. His gaze was drawn to the dance studio's mirrors. They reflected the room, but not as it was. In the mirrors, the chairs were no longer empty. 3 girls now sat there. Chapter 57. Chen Ge's breath turned shallow as he faced the haunted reflection, 3 pale girls bound to wooden chairs, their twisted bodies fused with the seats. Their lifeless eyes stared back at him through the mirror, their mouths parted as if whispering secrets too dreadful to hear. The chairs scraped forward each time he moved, and the lockers behind him trembled with increasing urgency. A name had disturbed this place. Zhang Ge. The air grew dense with unseen pressure. The mirrors reflected only what lurked in the studio, but he sensed something worse hiding in the dressing room. When the lockers clanged violently, he bolted toward the exit. The chairs blocked his path, now unnervingly closer. As he lunged, invisible hands clutched at his shoulders. In the mirror, he saw pale arms wrapped around him. One of the seated girls tried to drag him back. Instinct guided his hand. The mallet swung. A shrill wail filled the studio as the chair cracked beneath the blow. The girl's expression shifted, from desperation to venom. With each strike, the chairs splintered, and the ghostly grip weakened. But they retaliated. One clawed at his throat, the others clawed at his legs, trying to drag him down. Chen Ge fought like a man possessed, smashing, shoving, and refusing to be taken. One chair shattered. Then another. He pounded the third until the choking stopped. But freedom was short-lived. A creeping foulness entered the room, a stench carried on a heavy, unseen presence. From the corridor, strange noises approached, slow and deliberate. Something far more dangerous than the girls was coming. The 3 ghosts recoiled, eyes wide with terror. They weren't looking at Chen Ge. They were looking past him. He turned slowly. The mirror no longer showed his reflection. Standing behind him was a tall figure in a crimson school uniform. Her presence silenced the room. No more banging lockers, no more wailing. Just a chilling stillness. Zhang Ge had arrived. And everything else fled. Chapter 58. Chen Ge stood frozen before the mirror, face to face with a figure cloaked in dread. A girl in a red school uniform stood just beyond the glass, her hair masking her face, her clothing soaked and clinging as though freshly stained. As she slowly lifted her head, the mirror fogged, and she vanished. Then came the silence. Behind Chen Ge, a shadow began to rise. Cast by the dim glow of his phone, it grew in shape and hue, mirroring the uniform from the mirror, crimson and soaked. The presence leaned gently against his back. A weightless coldness slid over his shoulders, then down to his fingers, entwining with his own. Chen Ge dared not move. The phone slipped from his hand, its light flickering before surrendering to darkness. Hair from the figure behind him brushed and tangled with his own. Paralyzed by the ghostly presence, he stared at the mirror. Slowly, scenes from the past bled through the glass. He saw 5 girls in clean uniforms entering the dance studio, laughing, teasing, followed by Chen Ge, quiet and alone, clutching a familiar bag. The same bag that once held 5 untouched boxes of candy. The mirror showed them practicing ballet. The others joked among themselves while Chen Ge, excluded, continued alone. After a short rest, she tried to share the candy. It was refused, mocked. One girl retrieved love letters addressed to Chen Ge, accusing her in front of the others. Chen Ge remained silent, her kindness rejected. Later, a tall, slouching man entered the room. Chen Ge couldn't make out his features. He beckoned Chen Ge. She hesitated, then approached the office door without stepping in. Moments passed. Then she bolted from the room, the man chasing after her, shouting. The other girls watched silently. Chen Ge's screams for help echoed through the studio, unanswered. Desperation led her to the window, her only escape. Chen Ge's mind reeled. He recalled the words from the black phone, red dancing shoes. A uniform died in sorrow. Her name, now a whisper carried by fear. The mirror faded. The man, now calm, turned back to the 5 girls, who sat frozen in guilt and shock. That day, something shattered. And from it, Chen Ge, the Red Spectre, was born. Chapter 59. The dance studio was unnervingly silent. Before Chen Ge, the man who had been with the 5 girls glared at them, his gaze sharp and commanding. One girl, weeping, was harshly yanked from the floor by the man, who pointed accusingly at her. Another girl, tall, like Chen Ge, stepped forward, as though familiar with the man. Her voice joined his, and together, they persuaded the others. After a few tense moments, the man left. The 5 girls then changed and departed, leaving the studio eerily still. But the atmosphere grew heavy. The coldness of Chen Ge's presence crept up Chen Ge's back, an invisible weight pressing down on him. He had expected more from the mirror, more of Chen Ge's story, but it only showed what had happened in the studio. There had to be more: Chen Ge's fall from the 4th floor, her chances of survival if help had reached her in time. Could the man have silenced her last breath? Or had the authorities been involved? His thoughts raced, but the mirror remained still. Chen Ge reached for his phone, planning to contact Inspector Li. But before he could dial, a scream shattered the silence. Chen Ge's hair, thick and dark, coiled around his neck, choking him, tightening like a snake's grip. Panic surged as Chen Ge struggled for breath, but in her twisted mind, Chen Ge seemed to believe this was the only way they could be together, her love now a curse. Unable to move, Chen Ge weakly begged for her forgiveness. He promised to help her bring those who wronged her to justice, but her grip remained firm, as if weighing her options. Just when all seemed lost, the door to the studio creaked open. A lanky figure appeared in the doorway, Zhang Pang, knife in hand, grinning with malice. But when he saw Chen Ge, his smile faded, replaced by caution. Zhang Pang stepped into the studio, but as his first foot landed, something shifted. His body twisted unnaturally, as though controlled by an invisible force. Fear gripped his face as he ran, his limbs jerking like a puppet pulled by strings. Chen Ge, freed from Zhang Ye's grasp, watched him flee, a red flash of movement in the mirror. Realizing the urgency, Chen Ge grabbed his phone and raced for the exit, hoping to catch up with Zhang Pang. As he sprinted into the dark night, he called Inspector Li. His voice was breathless as he shared the new discovery: "I found another murder at Western Zhejiang's private academy." Chapter 60. Chen Ge's heart raced as he dialed Inspector Li, desperate to discuss a death he believed was more than a suicide. He explained that 4 years ago, a student named Zhang Ye had jumped from a building at Western Zhejiang's private academy, but something about the case didn't add up. The official verdict was suicide, but Chen Ge had his doubts. Inspector Li, puzzled, checked the case files. He confirmed that Zhang Ye's death was recorded as a fall from the 4th floor. The 5 girls who were with her that day had claimed she was alone in the studio when the tragedy occurred, and there were no signs of foul play. According to their testimonies, Zhang Ye had been under a lot of stress and had a troubled mental state. Chen Ge wasn't convinced. He argued that the 5 girls were lying to cover up the truth. He insisted that Zhang Ye had been forced to jump to hide something far more sinister. He also pointed out discrepancies in the time of death, claiming that Zhang Ye couldn't have died after the girls left school. Li, still skeptical, explained that the time of death had been confirmed between 6 and 8 p.m., after the girls had already left. The cause of death was a broken spine, consistent with a fall. Chen Ge argued that if Zhang Ye was still alive after the fall, the girls had abandoned her, leaving her to die in agony alone. The investigation into the deaths of the 5 girls who had been with Zhang Ye seemed pointless, as they had all died shortly after her. However, Chen Ge was determined to find the true murderer, describing a tall, slouched man he believed was responsible for her death. Li, fatigued from his own ongoing investigations, doubted Chen Ge's claims but promised to help after the current case was resolved. With a sigh of relief, Chen Ge hung up the phone. He glanced back at the school one last time but froze in shock. Zhang Ye's ghost stood behind him, her school uniform drenched in blood. She stared at him with a strange, silent expression, just a few meters away.